All right, so welcome to the official Saltburn after party. I'm your host, Marshall Stannis. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Co-host Pickles, how are we doing back there? Good, yeah? As I said, this is the official Saltburn after party. Emerald Fennel actually called me and asked me to do this. So we're going to go through plot summary. We're going to go through characters. We're going to go through a spoiler talk about the themes. We're going to talk about the interviews. We're going to talk about everything. And then I'll do a follow-up when the movie is actually out and reference like specific scenes and shots and et cetera, et cetera. But we're just going to break down the discourse about this movie, everything about it, because I can't stop thinking about it. I think it's incredible. I think it's audacious. I think it's sexy. I think it's horrifying. I think it's weird. And I think it's such a good movie to talk about. So we're just going to go. Now, this is going to be a very comprehensive spoiler talk. I assume you've seen the movie, but I'm going to give a quick recap summary of events. Basically, the story follows Oliver Quick. Oliver Quick is presented as sort of a nerdy, shy, new kid on campus, a bit from lower means. He befriends Jacob Elordi's character named Felix. They get along like a house on fire. Eventually, Oliver Quick's dad passes away, and then Felix invites him to his family's estate in Saltburn for the summer so they can have like a fun holiday to take his mind off things.
I don't think I'll ever go home again.
Well, why don't you come home with me? Come to Saltburn.
Mr. Quick. Wow.
From there, the movie basically enters spoiler territory. So the basic setup is that Oliver Quick clearly has like an infatuation with Felix. He's very drawn to him. He's sexually attracted to him. It also feels like an obsession. You can't tell if he wants to be him or like be with him. Felix is shown to be rather sweet, inviting him out to this estate. And essentially, as the movie progresses, we start seeing that Oliver is a bit sinister. He starts basically trying to separate the family from one another. He has a sexual scene with pretty much every single member of this family.
Me in the end, men are so lovely and dry.
He basically starts gaslighting them all, pitting them against each other, and it kind of becomes a malignant presence in this family.
What makes you think I got with Venetia?
Farleigh saw you too. Just fucking cringe, mate. I mean, really, you're my friend. You're supposed to be here with me.
I didn't want to embarrass Venetia.
Farleigh said you two were practically eating each other.
Oh, and you believe him? Me and Venetia? Come on.
Now, long story short, he basically wipes the entire family out. That's kind of the end of the movie. He basically picks them off one by one in different ways, some accidents, some not. Very quick summary. It's skipping a bunch of twists. It's skipping the way the movie kind of misdirects you onto who's going to be the bad guy, who's going to be the good guy. We're going to get into all that. I just figure if you haven't seen the movie, that's all you need to know. Now, we're going to get into the spoiler talk. I assume you've seen this movie, and we're just going to go character by character and see what comes up with each sort of character as we go. So the first character I want to talk about is Oliver Quick. Now, obviously, Oliver Quick is our protagonist. We see the movie through his eyes, and initially we feel like the way Oliver is going to be presented is he's going to be sort of the audience surrogate, right? He's going to be the everyman, if not slightly below everyman, that we watch the movie through. And then as he enters this world of extreme wealth, we're meant to be sort of taken aback and like fish out of water the same way he is. The movie's stroke of genius here is that we have a lot of empathy built up for Oliver from the start because of his sort of meek demeanor. When he fobs off that friend that really likes maths and sums,
I believe. Fucking ask me a sum then!
We aren't proud of him for doing that, but we get why he does it. And we also get why he's drawn to Felix, because I think as an audience, whether you want to admit it or not, we are drawn to these shiny things the same way Oliver is. So as an audience surrogate character, he is initially presented just so well. You're drawn to him. He's magnetic. There's moments of confidence. There's moments of sort of a sinister nature, but for the most part, you like him. There is that scene where he's watching Felix getting it on with that girl from the window early on, which does feel a bit voyeuristic and weird. But I guess given everything we've seen from him, we kind of hand wave it off. It is until we get to the Saltburn estate where we start realizing that the sort of audience surrogate character, the kind of main character, is a lot more sinister here and might actually be the antagonist of the piece. For the most part, we just feel like he's a bit horned up. We just feel like he's a bit voyeuristic, and obviously it's exploring unrequited love. He loves Felix. He's obsessed with Felix, and Felix likes him as a friend, but, you know, not in that way.
You sure about that? You sure about that? You sure about that?
The movie shows its hand fairly early on when we have a scene of him watching Felix touch himself.
Hear me when I say, hey, it's
Murder on your dance floor. You better not kill the groove. Yeah, 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 yeah. Now again, I might be having like a bit of a Freudian slip here. Obviously, this isn't a consensual encounter. It isn't super cool to do. But in terms of what we see in movies, this isn't too wild. We go, okay, he's really infatuated with Felix. He's watching, bit weird, bit creepy, but like we're still kind of with him. After the scene where he watches Felix touch himself, the movie kind of shifts gears into what it's mainly about, which is sort of sexual and gothic horror. So basically, this kind of meek, mild-mannered character we've been watching sneaks into the bathtub after Felix is finished getting the job done and like slurps up his bathwater. And I love this scene because it just goes on for so long, and it does this incredible thing of you're like, oh, he's not going to do it, is he? And then he starts doing it. And then he starts licking the plug hole and you're like, all right, so this guy's a bit of a freak. This guy's got it down bad. The thing I love about this casting choice is that they got Barry Keoghan, who is known as being this weird, enigmatic presence.
You know you're in for a treat when this guy is playing a weird little freak. He's always playing a quirky little man with a lot of stuff going on. And that tradition continues with Emerald Fennell's new film, Saltburn, where he plays perhaps his weirdest, littlest, and freakiest character yet.
Like, he was in Killing of a Sacred Deer, and he basically did the exact same thing he does in this movie, just with a supernatural twist almost. He infiltrates the family and kind of tries to half seduce them, half mess with their heads. And then he was the weird kid in Banshees of Inisherin. He was even a bit weird and sinister in his role in Eternals, but I think the thing I like about him is there's this great physicality to him. Emerald Fennell's talked about this in an interview, and I really admire the fact she just goes, yeah, I find him really seductive in like a really weird way. He's one of my favorite actors, and I just think he's like just incredibly magnetic, and he is.
I'd seen Barry in Killing of a Sacred Deer and just thought it's the best performance I've ever seen. Just full stop. I think that any actor's ever given. It was just so chilling and sort of sexy and weird and real and horrible, and you know, and he seemed to get the thing that I really love in all movies and really wanted in this, is that he's both a real person and a sort of feeling too.
There's something about him. His facial features are striking. Presenting this movie as kind of an antisocial nerd, the way he carries himself doesn't exactly scream Riz and kind of like sexual magnetism. The moment he gets to Saltburn, and as it escalates, he starts kind of like embodying more and more of this kind of like perverse sexual magnetism while also coming off incredibly uncomfortable.
Hi, mate. No trunks allowed in the field. Well.
It's this really interesting dynamic that all the kind of sexual based scenes that his character has kind of play both ways. There are plenty of people leaving the theater going, okay, it was weird, but like I kind of get it. And a lot of people leaving the theater going, what the fuck? Like I do not know, absolutely not. And this is intentional on Emerald Fennell's part. She has said in interviews countless times that she is trying to sort of provoke conversations, and she's trying to challenge what sort of sexually titillates us and kind of unpack where we draw the line, where we slam the door shut.
The thing about this film, I suppose, is that it is sexy, but it's sexy in a way that is transgressive. And I suppose I want to interrogate our relationship with our own desire and our relationship with the things that we desire, how destructive that desire often is. And that feeling so quickly becomes self-loathing. If people find this film sexy or disturbing, funny or not funny, I'm kind of interested in why. I'm interested in why sort of some men have interviewed me and described the sex scenes as gross out. So, you know, there's a moment in the movie when people are like, no, I'm not going to engage with this, I don't like it. I'm just interested in that.
This sort of theme of pushing sexual boundaries and kind of challenging the perverse nature of what some of us are into is explored in these really sexually explicit, provocative and uncomfortable scenes. But I think Oliver Quick being a physical manifestation and an exploration of that is really interesting. He is a physically striking character. Initially, he's presented as really nerdy and kind of like uncomfortable, but as the movie goes on and we learn more about his character, similar to those sexual scenes, he slowly becomes a bit more appealing. We start going, oh, he's got a really striking jawline from like a lot of different angles. Oh, he's got a really muscular back. I thought that must have been Felix. Oh, we're in the final scene and he's got a horse cock. There's this great scene where it's revealed that he has like a massive schlong, and it's seen as this really like big empowering moment for him, where the rest of the people on the Saltburn estate go, all right, good for you, like let's get on with the show.
Well.
It's interesting because in that scene, he kind of shows up to that setting, to that field with a look of confidence. He's like, you guys don't even know what's coming, and then drops his dax. It's used in promotion, and like rightfully so. It's a great scene. It's kind of refreshing to have a movie that is so obsessed with kind of male physicality in the most explicit sense. I think Oliver Quick is a really fascinating character. People act like it's a twist, or the movie thinks it's a twist that Oliver Quick is evil. Absolutely not. I think the twist is how evil and how calculated. All right, these sexual horror scenes don't happen off screen and then we go, oh, is it Oliver? Like, you know, who was the one that touched Farleigh in the middle of the night? Or who was the one that went down on Venetia in the middle of the night? Or who was the one that approached Felix in the maze? It's like, we know it's Oliver Quick throughout the movie being weird and a bit twisted and a bit sadistic. We know he's pitting them against each other. We know he's kind of in everyone's ears.
My fucking plan, oh God.
The twist at the end of the movie isn't that he's behind this all. We know that. We know that. Like, that's very clearly stated. He's shown throughout the movie to be dividing them mentally, physically, and sexually. I think the interesting thing about Oliver Quick's character is just how calculated he is. The idea that he stuck the pin in the bike, or the idea that he actually did have money in his wallet at the bar and just wanted to see how generous Felix would be. Just sort of a test almost to be like, oh, can I get him to do the thing? Can I take advantage of his kind, giving nature? Can I take advantage of his privilege?
It's my round, I can't. Ask him.
I need a hand with these ones, mate. Oh, and you drop this on the floor by your feet. I was gonna nick it, but I thought I'd do the right thing.
Pay it back tomorrow.
I know what you're talking about, mate.
Thank you, Ale! Oh, hey!
It's not a story of how Oliver Quick, some lowly boy, was corrupted by immense wealth and power and privilege that he was exposed to. It almost shows that he was seeking this out and looking for a target and looking for a goal almost that he could like infiltrate and take for himself. And I think the interesting thing is kind of having a discussion of where did he fall in love with Felix and when did he just want to be Felix? I think initially it feels like he wanted some of Felix's social clout. He wanted to get a taste of the money and the lavish lifestyle, and at a certain point he realized, wait, I'm infatuated with this guy. I am obsessed with this guy. This isn't just me trying to take some power. I think the other thing is, if there is a big twist in this movie, it's the big midpoint twist where Felix takes Oliver Quick to his family's house. We know at this point that Oliver Quick is sinister. We know he's a little sexual freak, all right? He's been doing like weird shit throughout this movie.
Check it out now.
You know, we thought, oh, he was a lowly, innocent boy, and this is a story about how power corrupts. But then we find out, oh, he's actually from a pretty well-off family, and not only that, a lovely family, and not only that, they're actually rather upper middle class, and not only that, but he's got siblings, and his family cares about him, and his dad is still alive. So the whole lie he told Felix, which was basically coming out of a place of like, I feel like Felix is abandoning me, let me pull him back with a pity story. But like the reveal here that this is fake is fantastic. And not only that, not only is the dad still alive, his family seems lovely. They seem to really care about him. And we find out through context clues in that conversation that he's always been a loner. He's always wanted to be an only child, and he's pushed these people away. And it's almost this thing of like, it almost feels like to me, he has this sense of like rich elite privilege that the Saltburn characters have, that he's taking out on his family at home. He almost resents them for not giving him the lifestyle that these Saltburn estate characters have. And he's ashamed of them, even though they're fine and lovely and doing really well. And Felix would probably kill for a family that emotionally connected. We actually see in that car ride, Felix sort of says like, oh, your mum sounds lovely, blah, 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 blah. And it's really interesting watching that scene with Felix and Oliver talking to the parents, because Felix seems really kind of taken aback and impressed with just how much of a warm, loving kind of family they are. We can almost kind of infer that he would love that from like his mum and dad, because they are, as much as they're funny, they are quite cold and disconnected at points.
Poor V, the boys just run a mile.
Why?
Well, she gives it away for free. She's sexually incontinent. Has been since she was 14.
May I be excused, please?
No, we haven't finished lunch.
The lunch is cold.
Farleigh! Sit down and eat the bloody pie. Just eat it and shut up!
I think it's delicious.
We know from 40 minutes or earlier in that Oliver Quick is a sick, little, sexual, twisted, deviant freak, all right? We know that. But I think the twist here is just how smart and calculated and cunning and just sort of like, I'm going to take this family for a ride. I'm going to take this money. I'm going to like pull off this insane plan. It's fascinating, and it's what makes the ending work. The twist of this movie is not that Felix was behind the murders. Obviously, he was behind the murders. It feels like every single person that he didn't get what he wanted from, he just kind of like cut off. I love sort of the way Oliver Quick's character explores just being down bad for someone, being sexually obsessed with someone. That level of obsession that leads Timothée Chalamet to fucking a peach, right? And in this movie, they take that peach scene from Call Me By Your Name and turn it up to about 11. The bath scene, for example, is a great example of that, but the grave sex scene is just fucking incredible. I love it. I think Oliver Quick's character being used to explore the themes of kind of like just sexual desperation and just that level of wanting to be with someone where you're like doing these really like perverse, invasive, like behind closed doors things. There's this great interview clip where an interviewer says to Emerald Fennell like, oh, you know, like I love how this movie explores a romantic obsession, just that like physicality of it. And he's like, you know, I've never been obsessed with someone enough to like, you know, drink their bathwater. And Emerald goes like, not yet, you haven't.
We've all been so royally obsessed with someone, it makes us go stir crazy.
Totally.
I mean, I haven't really been obsessed with someone to the level that I want to like drink their bath water or, you know.
Yet. There's always time.
On some level, there's like this perverse relatability to these scenes. Like, yes, maybe not all of us have gone to the extent of drinking bathwater or banging graves, but I think this idea of just being like so enamored with someone just like, yeah, just down bad. I think this movie does a really good job of exploring, and I think the idea that this movie is just gross or perverse and you don't glean anything else from it is a bit of shame, because as Emerald Fennell says in interviews, there's a lot of thought put into the staging and the lighting and the costume design and the way the kind of camera lingers on these characters. She talks about in interviews how she constantly wanted mirrors, the way you can always be looking at someone and catching a glimpse of someone.
We had two of these inbuilt sinks that are matching opposite each other. So it meant the boys, even when their backs are to each other, they can always see each other. And then the bath is freestanding right in the middle of the room. There's something very exhibitionist about the way that people live in houses like this. In the olden days, people would have just, you know, servants would have just come in and out. You're on display. And that's very much part of this film.
The way that when you're like kind of sexually attracted to someone, you'll give anything to just see a little bit more. She talks about the fact that Jacob Elordi's character in the introduction of the Saltburn estate is wearing a linen shirt, and the fact that like, yeah, when you're drawn to someone, you just can't stop looking at their body, and the thing with the linen shirt is the light catches it and you can kind of see an outline.
The reason that you choose like linen is for this. You're always kind of catching the body through the clothes. And we see it again and again in this movie. If, you know, we're always kind of shooting light through night dresses or shirts. You know, I think when you're in love with someone, you are always aware of their body. And so it's important that we kind of got that element.
Is it pervy? Is it horny? Would it feel like a bit of a double standard if it was a male director talking about female stars? Maybe, but like, who gives a shit? It's such a good exploration of these feelings that I feel like not enough movies and people and just like TV shows in general talk about. And I think Oliver Quick, again, being presented as so weird and cunning and just like down bad is just so well done. There's obviously that great scene where he watches Felix touching himself. There's this other great scene where it's almost like blink and you'll miss it. And if you're not really paying attention to the audio in the theater, you might miss it. There's another scene where it infers that Felix is touching himself again. You kind of hear some grunts from behind the bathroom door. Oliver Quick actually stands outside, tempted to open the door and I guess talk to him or like approach him sexually, but then kind of leaves it and walks off, and then it cuts to him in the bath later, kind of like reflecting. To me, it felt like he heard touching himself and was almost tempted to be like, do you want a hand? Like, let me join, or almost like put his heart out on the line, right? The next scene they have together after that is Felix figuring out who Oliver really is. He goes to the parents and realizes that Oliver's been lying. And then the scene after that is Oliver finally kind of going like, I'm down bad for you, I love you. And then Felix going, you make my blood run cold.
You're the only friend I ever had, Felix. I'm still the same person.
I don't know what you are, but I do know you make my fucking blood run cold.
So it feels like that scene where he's almost tempted to like walk in on him touching himself is like the last opportunity they had to kind of get this unrequited love, at least on Oliver's end, out on the table. You know, unfortunately for Oliver, the next day Felix figures out the lie, and then after that Oliver shoots his shot essentially, and that seals Felix's fate. Whether Felix knows it or not, Felix turns him down, and then Felix insists that he takes a drink of the poisoned wine. Wait, I was meant to dress up for all these different characters and I fucked up. All right, give me one sec. One last thing I want to say about Oliver Quick's character. I've seen a few criticisms of this movie being like, oh, it's criticizing the working class, it's criticizing poor people and showing that they can be really sinister and pernicious, and like, you know, it's talking about this idea that like if they had the chance to be rich and well off, like they would.
And then this rich girl's got to make a rich film about being rich, got the working class boy in it, got him to do all these depraved things on screen, just to make the punchline be, rich people aren't that bad. If poor people had the opportunity, they would.
First off, I'm just going to call it. Even if you don't want to be that rich, even if you think these people are detestable, like, surely 99% of the audience found the Saltburn estate captivating and interesting, and like you kind of want to spend a holiday there. You cannot tell me that during that montage where they're drinking wine and playing tennis in suits and walking around naked in fields, that you didn't want to be there in that vibe. Like, I actually refuse to accept the idea that like there are people sitting there going like, ugh, I hate these people. I would never want to engage. Like, come on. Bullshit. Moving past that, Emerald Fennell has actually talked about the fact that this isn't meant to be a commentary on class. It is literally just meant to be a movie about infatuation and like obsessive love and the weird, twisted, kind of disgusting, uncomfortable things that obsessive love makes us do. I don't think Emerald Fennell's sitting there going, oh, I want to show a movie that like poor people can be bad too. And also the twist is that he is actually rather wealthy himself. Like, yes, not Saltburn levels of wealthy, but compared to most families, compared to 95% of the population, his family is revealed to be like very upper middle class. All right, he's doing fine, and that's kind of the point. Is it's not a commentary on like, oh, money makes people bad or like poverty makes people bad. It's meant to be a commentary on like, oh, there's a sinister nature that can sometimes come out with love, and like let's explore that in really dramatic settings and fashion. I think this criticism is boring and silly and also just not very fun. You know, have some fun. Like, can we admit that like watching the Saltburn estate crumble, watching all these weird things that these rich people do is fun to watch, all right? It's like a level of wealth that most of us, even the actors in the movies, probably won't see again. Can we just have fun with it, all right? The tour of the house is incredible. The bathroom's incredible. The settings are incredible. The music's incredible. Just like have a bit of fun. I'm not meaning to come across as like out of touch here, but I think the idea that the message of this movie is a critique of the lower class is like weird and kind of silly and also not accurate. I think people are just taken aback that the rich people in this movie are presented as rather nice and generous, and that makes people uncomfortable because normally when we look at the 1%, we want to instantly like villainize them, and I think people don't like the fact that like Felix is kind of the good guy of the movie and Oliver Quick is the bad guy of the movie. So moving on to Felix. What an incredible character. What an incredible performance. I love the way the film frames Felix. From the opening scenes to the ending scenes, he is framed as like an object of desire. We see what Oliver Quick's character sees. All right, so yes, Jacob Elordi, he's not exactly ugly. He is easy on the eyes.
Jacob's not smart in his character, but, you know, a lot of Felix's thing is he's just, everyone wants to be around him because he's so good looking, and Jacob can't really escape that. It's just the way he looks.
Obviously that's doing a lot of the heavy lifting here, but the way the film frames him, the way it's shot, the way the kind of music cuts with him even, it feels leery but in a really seductive romantic way and not a really creepy way. This movie has an emphasis on voyeurism and kind of like, yes, constantly feeling like you're watching and kind of perving. Like Emerald Fennell has talked about that, and I think this is just so well done with Felix's character. While I'm on that topic, whenever Oliver Quick is kind of leered at in this movie, whenever his physicality, whether it be like naked or not, is explored, it's done in sort of a non-consensual flash sort of way. Like it's kind of a bit more shocking and comes out of nowhere, and you're like, whoa, he has a big dick, whoa, he has a good back. It's not these slow, seductive shots the way with Felix it is. Just an interesting thing to note. I find when Oliver Quick is presented in a naked or semi-naked context, it's a lot more brash, a lot more bold, and with Felix, it's a lot softer. It might be the way we are meant to see them as characters. Objectification aside, I think the interesting thing that they do with Felix is kind of the reveal that, like, yeah, he's not kind of the villain of the piece.
Farleigh, what? Just cut him a break, mate. What? And that round's gonna cost a fucking fortune.
Pub rules, Felix.
Well, you might need a hand with these ones, mate. Oh, and you drop this on the floor by your feet. I was gonna nick it, but I thought I'd do the right thing.
Thank you. Pay it back tomorrow.
I know what you're talking about, mate.
Thank you, Ollie!
You know, we keep hearing about the fact that he had like previous male friends that he brought to the estate that he eventually abandoned, and the way that Oliver is going to be abandoned in a similar fashion. I think the reveal here that not only is Felix nice, but he's incredibly like generous and thoughtful. That wallet scene shows that he goes above and beyond. Not only does he like pick up the money and like save Ollie, but then he like goes back and goes, Ollie's got it, like, yay, Ollie. Like, he's really sweet, and he's also perceptive. He doesn't sit there in his rich privilege bubble and not notice that other people aren't as lucky as him. He tries his best. Yes, he still has moments of privilege, but he tries his best to sort of still relate and understand, you know, like he sees that Oliver is struggling and he does his best to kind of help that situation. Now, yes, you can say maybe it's a condescending thing to do. I think it was rather nice. Doesn't matter if he's a gazillionaire or just has more money in his pocket. It was a nice thing to do. And I also like the kind of like mini twist that he kind of didn't exactly fuck over the previous friend he had. The whole movie's kind of positioning you to be like, oh, he's going to use Oliver. He's eventually going to abandon Oliver. And then we find out that the reason he abandoned his previous friend is because the previous friend tried to like bang his sister and made it really awkward and weird, similar to what Oliver did. And it's like, well, in that case, like, is that not relatively fair enough? Like, I feel like most people at home, if you had a friend that tried to like bang your sister, at the very least, it would make things a bit harder and a bit more uncomfortable. Was he maybe a bit out of touch getting Oliver to maybe meet with his drug-addled mother? Yeah, like, you know, it was a bit rich privileged thing to do. You know, let's go see your mum. Like, all mums are great. But I mean, the thing is, the twist then reveals that like that was bullshit. So yeah, like Felix's biggest crime for most of the movie is just kind of being occasionally out of touch. But even then, it feels like he's doing his best to just introduce Oliver to this world and kind of show him a good time.
God, Ollie, I'm sorry Mum asked so many rude questions. Don't take it personally.
Someone unpack my suitcase.
Shit, yes, I should have told you they do that here. Oh, I hope you don't mind. I had them hang up an old school dinner jacket. We dressed for dinner here, so I didn't want you to be caught short. Really happy you're here. I'm sorry that everything's so old-fashioned.
Oh, it's wonderful.
If you can't share it with the people you care about, isn't that worse? Like, he's trying to bring people in and he's trying to show them a good time. I think he's well-intentioned. I don't think he has like a mean bone in his body. If anything, throughout the movie, he's shown to be rather naive at different points. And yeah, was he maybe a bit mean to Oliver, cutting him out the moment he kind of got sick of him a bit when he was like, get out of my room, you're trying to mother me, you're trying to like clean my room, like get out. To me, that kind of read as a bit of like almost gay panic, right? Like he felt like Oliver was getting too close, a bit too comfortable, a bit too like girlfriendy almost, like, clean your room, do this, do that. And I think he felt a bit smothered, maybe not exactly homophobic, but just a bit like, I don't want friends this close, this is a bit too much, this is a bit too suffocating. Yes, he lashed out, but aside from that, I struggle to really think of a scene where he was actively an asshole. In fact, he was really, really patient, and that's why his kind of like moment where he's like sleeping with that chick in the middle of the maze, and Oliver kind of comes up behind him and he goes, oh, for fuck's sake. It's so funny. Every single time he says, oh, for fuck's sake, when Oliver like interrupts him like banging that girl, I laugh like every time. There are so many like great line deliveries from Jacob Elordi in this movie that are just replaying in my brain. Every single time he says to Oliver Quick that it's like a black tie event, I laugh. It's so funny the way he says it, just like, it's black tie.
Dress for dinner?
Yeah, it's like black tie.
so good. So funny. And when he leaves the movie, I wouldn't say the movie gets worse, but you feel it. It feels like a loss. He's such a magnetic presence, so sweet-natured. And like, yeah, come at me if you think he's like a rich dick. Like, I don't care. I found him warm. I found him captivating. And I get why Ollie likes him. I think Emerald Fennell wanted us to feel that. She's said that throughout interviews, like, oh, you know, he's obsessed with Jacob Elordi. Who wouldn't be?
And your room.
I mean, who doesn't want to stay there? I do. Yeah, who'd say no to Felix? No one, I don't think.
Like, it's a great character. It's a really, really well-conceived character. Both Oliver and Felix are just fantastic characters in their sort of conception because they're just such polar opposites, but you kind of get at different points why they get along. Yes, Felix maybe takes pity on Oliver, maybe almost to a condescending level, but if that's his biggest crime, like, you know? Next, we've got Farleigh, played by Archie Madekwe. This is like the closest sweater to something I can picture him wearing. He's a really fascinating character. When people talk about kind of the evil, rich characters that they were expecting from this movie, I think of Archie, to be honest. I think he's the most kind of sinister and pernicious one in terms of like people from the Saltburn estate. Now, yes, he's not exactly part of the actual like Saltburn family, right? Like they make a point of that. He's kind of a guest there. He's the one that kind of gloats most about the money. He kind of bullies Oliver at different points for not being from the same level of wealth. He's a pretty mean and conniving character, but I guess the difference between him and Oliver, at least with Farleigh, he's kind of out in the open about it. Most of the characters going, oh, Farleigh, knock it off. Oh, Farleigh, give him a break. Oh, Farleigh, stop being so mean.
No, you can't snake your way out of the ground.
I'm not.
It looks like you are.
Come on. Okay.
Farleigh, just cut him a break, man.
Whereas with Oliver, he comes off as really nice and really meek, and then internally and in the background, he's a sinister, evil, twisted little shit. Farleigh is mean. Farleigh is a bit out of touch. Particularly the scene where he gets Oliver to sing the I Love You, Pay My Rent song. It's a very cruel prank. It's something that we can't really picture Venetia or Felix doing to Oliver. However, knowing what we know about Oliver at the end of the movie, how bad do we sort of feel? On top of that, I feel like even though we find Farleigh mean and kind of combative, he's also the most perceptive. He's the only one, aside from Duncan, the butler, who is kind of onto Oliver from the jump. He's one of the few ones that's like, I don't trust this guy, I don't like it. Now, is part of that jealousy, is part of that, like, I thought I was the guest in this estate. Yeah, I just find him a really fascinating character. Now, this movie is a movie that doesn't explicitly state anyone's sexuality. You're sort of just meant to, like, sit there and go, okay, this person's into this person. They clearly swing that way. But Farleigh feels like he's engaging in this really intense enemies to lovers with Oliver. To me, it feels like Felix is into just random hot girls. Oliver is into Felix. Farleigh is into Oliver. I know we don't like this toxic rhetoric of like, oh, if they're mean to you, they like you. But to me, Farleigh feels like he's exhibiting that behavior. He is picking at Oliver constantly. He's combative with Oliver constantly. But then there's all these like scenes of like close intimacy and kind of homoerotic vibes from Farleigh to Oliver. And I think Oliver sniffs that out. He's like, he's only being this mean because there must be like a sexual component here, which is similar to the way Oliver conducts himself when it comes to his sexual behaviors and proclivities. And as a result, Oliver kind of sniffs that out. And that's why you get that amazingly uncomfortable, are you going to behave scene? Because it feels like Oliver goes, okay, I know you want me in like a sort of sexual, weird, hate fuck way. I'm going to give you that a bit, but it's going to be a sort of corrective Pavlovian dog's way of like teaching you to behave. It's weird. It's fucked up. I love it. I also love that he just like fucks over Farleigh twice in sort of the same way. Initially, he plants the story that Farleigh has been selling some of the family's priceless possessions to different salespeople. But then later in the movie, when Felix passes away, he directly infers that Farleigh was the one who may have like caused that by like giving him drugs. He sort of fucks over Farleigh twice to punish him for sort of taking joy in Oliver's poverty and kind of like picking on him. But yeah, Farleigh's a really interesting character. I like that he's kind of like an in-between outsider, but not really. He comes from wealth, but not this level of wealth, and he feels entitled, but not as entitled. And he picks on the one down below. It's very similar to Succession, where there's the people at the top, and then they pick on the people in the middle, and then those people in the middle pick on people lower than them, and then those people take it out on lower. That's what it feels like to me. I think he's a really interesting character, and it's a great performance too. I love his fashion. I love the raw energy he has for Oliver at different points. We could watch a movie from Farleigh's point of view of like, oh, this guy's come onto the estate. I fucking hate him, but also like, is he cute? Do I kind of like him? Maybe I'll fuck with him a bit. Really interesting character, and I feel like the quiet part is sort of said out loud. We get that there's a sort of sexual component there, but we don't know how much of it is genuine, like romantic desire, and how much of it is just like weird power, sexual aggression type stuff. Next, we had Elsbeth, played by Rosamund Pike.
Congratulations. Nominated for a Golden Globe Best Performance.
Morning.
Yeah, by a female actor in a supporting role in any motion picture. How are you feeling?
Well, I just landed in New York last night, and then I was in the middle of looking for a lint roller and working out what shoes to wear.
Yeah.
And my publicist who was in the room just said, how would you feel about a little Golden Globe nomination this morning? I was like, you what?
Fantastic performance. It is a fantastic performance. She has pretty much all the best lines of the movie. The fingers for pudding line is amazing. The line when the friend passes away and she goes, oh, she'll do anything for attention. Every single time I've seen this movie, like someone like pisses themselves laughing. I love this scene where she's trying to politely tell her friend to like fuck off and like go with the Russian guy.
Oh, but it'll be terrible when you're gone. How will I cope?
Well, I could actually stay for a little bit
Oh,
longer.
no, darling, no. You must be desperate to be rid of us and find your own place. I quite understand.
I love the scene where she goes, I could never be a lesbian. It's way too wet for me. Guys are so good because it's so dry. Hilarious.
I was a lesbian for a while, you know. But it was all just too wet for me in the end. Men are so lovely and dry.
She's shown to be really cold, disconnected, and a bit callous at different points and careless in what she says. However, she's still shown to be kind of warm and inviting, just in her own rich, twisted kind of way. She's kind of the best personification of the rich people out of touch and a bit evil, like trope. However, I think the thing I find interesting is after her whole family gets wiped out by Oliver and she bumps into Oliver again, obviously not knowing that Oliver has done it, and she's been away from the Saltburn estate for a while, she feels a lot more powerless. She feels very stripped back. She feels like kind of an everyday woman. She seems really sweet, really delicate, and someone who's just longing for human connection. Now, we only get like 5 minutes at most with her after the main events of the movie in this flash forward that's set in like 2022, 2023. But I think the thing I find interesting is her demeanor has changed completely. She's not dressed in these extravagant gowns. She's dressed in like just a really like lovely outfit, and she feels like a really like nice friend's mum you bump into like 5 years down the road after leaving school. There's a bit of sexual tension there I picked up on though. I will say, I'm not sure if everyone like picked up on it, but there's this great moment after she infers that the husband self-deleted. She actually says to Oliver like, oh, you need to come to Saltburn, like you can come to Saltburn and like no one's going to be bothering us, sort of like directly implying like, oh, we can have our little sexual tension payoff that we're having early in the movie and a little romantic fling, and no one's going to be there, aka my husband is not going to be there to interrupt. It's that type of careless, callous flirting that just comes out sometimes. But I think the interesting thing with her is, yes, she's presented as way warmer, way softer, and as a result, the cruelty that Oliver shows to her in the final moments of the movie, before the murder on the dance floor dance, these moments come off as just heinous and cruel and almost like really unnecessary. She gives him the whole estate willingly. It's kind of inferred that they have a bit of a romantic relationship for a few years before we assume he intentionally gets her sick, right? But just the montage of him like wheeling her around on the chair and like intentionally kind of being like really rigid and uncomfortable and not caring with his movements and watching her head bang forward, as well as just not only reciting everything he did to the family for almost no reason, unless it is to be cruel and rub it in before she finally passes away. And then not only that, but he gets on her bed and like rips the breathing tube out in just sort of this like, I can't even wait for you to die of the unnatural causes I've set you in. Like it needs to happen now. Like I can't be bothered. I want the estate and I want you out. Is really kind of, It's the most sinister moment of the movie for me because she's shown in that sort of latter section to be really sweet and inviting, and the film feels like it's really trying to punish her for that decision. Now, yes, that's just Oliver's nature, and it almost feels like he's been stewing on this for years and like, I can finally take what's mine. God, is it a tough watch for me. And if it wasn't for the murder on the dance floor scene that follows, I feel like the film would end on a totally different note. You would not be leaving going, oh, that was lovely and a bit fucked up. You'd be like, Jesus fucking Christ. But great character. I love the shot of her at the party where it's flashing to all these young people like dancing, and then she's just there with her glasses kind of like. And I also love that she clearly loves the husband, even if he's a bit of an embarrassing goofball. I love the bit where he comes out and goes, "It's hotter than Barbados, dear. Barbados."
Hotter than Barbados, apparently. Barbados.
And she's sort of like, yes, it's very hot. And he's like, oh, I'll get the gardener to do the water. And she's like, excellent idea.
Oh, I need to check with Robert to make sure that he's being extra vigilant with the hydrangeas.
Very wise, Mona. Oh, bliss. Bliss. Oh, this song. God, I haven't heard this song in forever. I used to hang out with them all.
Same with the suit of armor scene. Just hilarious.
Oh, how about fancy dress?
Oh, yes.
I can wear my suit of armor, Elsbeth.
Good idea, darling.
Great character. Very cruel her ending, but fantastic. Right, next we have Venetia. We are told that Venetia had an eating disorder. There's not too much with Venetia, unfortunately. I think it's a great performance. I love the way she kind of looks and carries herself. Basically, we hear from the mum that she's trying to seduce Oliver from like the moment he gets there. She stands out the window and watches him. She is sexually fascinated with Oliver. It makes us wonder if the situation that went down with Felix's previous friend and Venetia was instigated by her or the friend, or whether, like, we don't know. But it adds a layer to that. Wait, I was meant to get change for Venetia. All right, this is the best I could do for Venetia because it's pink. I'm sorry, I don't own too many like sparkly dresses or like sports bras. So anyways, with Venetia, yeah, we find out about the eating disorder. I don't think Oliver is into her in a romantic capacity, and it feels like the stuff he does with her sexually is almost to exhibit power and control and like kind of that seductive programming people do. It just kind of feels like he's using the lust she has for him and using it to his advantage. However, I do find her final encounter with Oliver really interesting. She basically says, I see you. I know there's something off here. You haven't been that close with Felix for that long. You've infiltrated this family. I don't like it. She almost figures out that something's weird here. I love the bit where she's like, you're probably wearing Felix's underwear. She almost says like, I know that you're in love with him. I know that you're down bad for him. I know that there's something more going on here than just a friendship between you two, at least on your end. She's almost suggesting that she knows that there's like a sinister component, a sinister nature to what's happening. I think she dies knowing that something is off. However, I don't think she dies knowing that Oliver is completely responsible for Felix's death. I guess the interesting thing is we see that he actually placed the razor blades that she used. I guess the interesting thing is we see that he placed the razor blades that she then used in the bathtub. I just wonder how that encounter went. I wonder if he like left it there and scurried off. I wonder if he wanted to be caught and like talked her into it the same way we saw earlier in the movie. He talked her into eating and talked her into like going down on her and like doing sexual stuff while she's on her period. Shown in those scenes to be incredibly effective at kind of coercive control. So I wonder if he almost like came into the room and, similar to getting her to eat when she doesn't want to eat, got her to use those razor blades when she doesn't really fully want to use those razor blades. Almost like he's playing on sort of a thought she's having, almost like he's playing on a passing thought she might be having and convincing her to take it over the edge. Would be curious to know and wonder if there's like a deleted scene or more context in the actual script as to whether he just placed the razor blade there or whether there was a sort of coercive control element to that, or whether she just saw it and went, oh, this guy's gonna take us all out either way. I'm just going to do it. Who knows? Maybe I'm reading into it too much too, but like, who knows? All right, next we've got Sir James, played by Richard E. Grant.
Oh, how about fancy dress?
Oh, yes.
I can wear my suit of armor, Elsbeth.
I love this character. I was going to get a knight's helmet because I am just obsessed with Richard E. Grant's delivery of, I could wear my suit of armor. I think it's so sweet. It's so funny. It's just so So beautiful. Such a beautiful moment for such a beautiful character. He is gorgeous. He is sweet. He is lovely. The actor and the character just feels like they're happy to be there. Somehow he is the patriarch of this family. He's made all the money. I don't know how. Surely to make that massive amount of wealth, you have to be a ruthless businessman. But he feels naive and silly and just like a little goofball.
I can wear my suit of armor, Elsbeth.
I love him. I love him. And I love the ending to his character. I love that it basically culminates in this scene of him going, Oliver, something's not right here. We need to move on. We'd like you out. How much money do you want? I see you for what you are. I'll give you the money. And then can you just go? Satisfying end for his character. It is inferred that he's self-deleted by the comment that Elsbeth makes in the cafe to Oliver when she says, I wonder why it took him so long in the end. I assume that has to be implying that he willingly self-deleted, right? Even though we don't see that death and it happens off screen, it doesn't feel like we're cheated. It almost seems like because he is such a sweet, warm character, he almost is able to avoid a really visceral, disgusting scene, unlike the rest of the characters. In any other movie, it might have felt a bit cheap just to have that be the way he passed away in a movie that's so fascinated with death and power and coercive control. But no, I found it effective, and I think the scene of him basically giving a bunch of money away to Oliver to get Oliver to leave him alone is sort of like a bit of a death in itself anyway. He looks defeated, and when you find out that he did self-delete, you kind of get it. Based on how you last saw him, you go, okay, sure. We're going to quickly run through those scenes, all right? And the reason I want to talk about these scenes is because I think one of the main themes in this movie and the main thing it's exploring is, yes, obsessive love, and yes, it's exploring obsessive love, but I love the audacity of these scenes. I love how full on they are. I love how long they go. Emerald Fennell has talked about in interviews the fact that she wanted them to go on long. She wanted them to be drawn out.
So much of Oliver's desire cannot be sated. What he really wants isn't possible. Even at the end, it's not possible. We have him getting a version of what he wants, but he's still alone. He's still there with the rocks, not the people. And so it was really, really important to me that scene held. And also that it was as long as it was, because obviously there's a lot of questions of, why didn't we cut out? We know what's going to happen. Why didn't we cut here? Why didn't we cut here? Why didn't we cut here? But the thing for me is sitting in the discomfort, sitting through the nervous laughter, through the horror, through the, that's part of it. People kind of would say, why not cut? But my answer is always, why cut?
And I think each scene, especially on rewatch, goes on so long, and each one feels like a radical, bold, confrontational idea. But at a certain point, you kind of start getting on board with it in a weird way. You start going okay, all right. Or maybe that's me. Maybe I'm just a sicko. But the bathtub scene, you're like, ooh, gross. And then as it makes you sit in that moment, you start going oh, I guess he's really down bad. Have I ever been that down bad for someone? I love the scene where he gets with Venetia while she's on her period, because there's a lot going on there. There's points where it feels coercive. There's points where it feels really sexy. There's points where it feels intentionally sort of provocative. I think the interesting thing about this scene is, yes, ideally men are not grossed out by these things, but I think the funny thing is she shows resistance to doing stuff while she's on that time of the month. It doesn't feel like for him he's progressively inclined. It doesn't feel like for Oliver as a character he's I'm going to show her that this is totally fine and I love this and make a really safe, warm sexual dynamic for her. It feels like the angle he's taking and the reason he wants to do it so bad and kind of do it in the way he does it, where he's smearing it all over and getting her to taste it as well, almost feels like I just want to see how far I can push her. I just want to see what she'll do for me. I want to see if I can get her to taste it when she wasn't planning to do so. That's what it felt like to me. Now, yes, do I find it a hot, seductive scene? Yeah. Do other people? Yes. However, do a lot of people find it gross and confronting? Sure. While men shouldn't be grossed out by periods, it also should be the woman's choice on what she does or doesn't do during that time of the month. And I just find it a really interesting scene, because to me it reads like Oliver trying to see what he can push her to do. It doesn't seem like she's particularly keen on the idea at the start. And it almost seems like, I'll get her to eat, I'll get her to do this. And then at the end, the payoff is I'll get her to self-delete. At least to me. Maybe that's a jump, whatever. Next, I love the scene with Farleigh. I just love it. I love that basically he gets fucked over publicly and he goes, I know Farleigh has the hots for me. I'm going to approach him in the middle of the night. I'm going to grab his cock and make him say that he'll behave. And once he says he'll behave, then I'll give him the release. I love the graveyard scene. I love it. I'm here for it. I love how long it goes. I love how far it takes it. He takes off his tie and you're like, is he going to do that? And then you're like, no, surely not. That's my dirty mind. Then he takes off his top and you're like, maybe it's just because it's raining. And then he takes off his pants and pulls out his horse cock and you're like, oh, there we go. And then he like bangs that grave for what feels like 2 to 3 minutes. And then he starts crying while doing it. Great scene. Such a good visual representation of just how down bad Oliver is. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love all the sick, twisted scenes in this movie. But next, I love the ending scene. Again, the Rosamund Pike finale feels really, really cruel. And to then have this scene where Oliver is kind of claiming the house as his own, walking around naked and dancing to Murder on the Dance Floor. Fantastic. Fantastic choice. Fantastic place to leave it. We get to see the cock that the characters kind of like hyped up earlier in the movie. It's like the most free and happy personality we've seen of Oliver, but it's come at the cost of completely wiping out a family. It's funny. It's dark. It's great. I love it. I love it. I love it. And I also love that it's like, yeah, an intentionally pervy sequence. It knows, Emerald Fennell knows that we're all just sitting there going, let's see it. Let's see it. Oop, there it is. And then he scurries off to another room and you're like, let's see it. Let's see it. Oop, there it is. And then he scurries off to another room. She knows. All right. She knows. We're all kind of like looking for it. And the film doesn't disappoint. I think it's hilarious. I think it's so funny. And I just love that there's a movie out that's like so obsessed with sort of like the male form. I like that this movie sort of feels very female gazy in a way that simultaneously obviously is kind of being pervy, but it doesn't feel gross. It's just kind of like, yep, all right, we're all acknowledging that these people are attractive and we're going to engage in that for a few hours. I think I'll wrap up there because otherwise I can just go on and on and on. I'll do a follow-up video. Thank you so much for joining me for the Saltburn official after party. I'm sure there's stuff I've missed. Please let me know in the comments. Thank you so, so much. Have a lovely day.
Man around your dance floor. You better not kill the groove. Yeah, 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 yeah.